Hello, everyone. Tyler Esselman here.
And Michael Osinski over here.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's a podcast, just to be clear, and it's a podcast specifically where we invite someone to come and talk to us. Maybe we know them, maybe we don't, maybe someone introduced us to them. But the whole point of it is they're bringing us an album that they believe is perfect.
So perfect, in fact, Michael, that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
Not sufficient.
Not sufficient. Nope.
No.
And we got a real good one today with a friend and collaborator, somebody who is part of the This One Goes to 11 family. Who we talking to today, Michael?
We are talking to Rae Shuman.
Rae Shuman, an old school chum of ours.
Indeed. Indubitably.
Rae is originally from Houston, Texas, but she lived in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East throughout her formative years. All over the place. She attended theater school at DePaul. You might have heard of it. It's formerly known as the Goodman School of Drama. And after working in the Chicago theater scene for some time, she grew tired of the seasonal depression, feel you there, and moved to Denver, Colorado in search of sunny winters and the great outdoors. Now for work, she manages community relations for a tech startup called Fluid Truck. And for fun, she paints and participates in all of the classic Colorado activities like skiing, hiking, camping, and going to electronic shows. We talk a bit about that on the pod. Mm-hmm. Her favorite ways to listen to an album from top to bottom are while cooking on the fly, running a lot of miles, in a blunt rotation with friends, or driving to the mountains. She's got it all. She covered all of the bases in this bio. I love it.
She's also our first ever guest from the Mountain Time Zone. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with that. I just think it's really cool, because it's just fun, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm sitting Pacific right now. You're sitting Eastern, and so at some point we need to have one of us in all of the time zones in America and Arizona, because Arizona doesn't do daylight savings time. I'm thinking of something different.
Is it Arizona? I know Indiana. Something weird about Indiana too, I think.
Yeah, we're going down a tangent here. Rae is great. Rae is great. She's in the mountains. She loves music. I say in this episode, when I think about music, I think about Rae. Rae is she's got a song in her heart, and she makes a great case for a really wonderful album, doesn't she?
She sure does. And we should why don't we just get right to it? Hear what she has to say.
Let's shall.
Rae Shuman, welcome to This One Goes to 11.
Hello, thank you. Excited to be here.
Deborah Rae Shuman, the one and only. How are you today? What's going on? How's the day been?
I'm doing great. Work has been kind of busy. I am taking tomorrow and the next day off to go skiing, so it's kind of like a compressed week.
Because that's what you do when you live in Denver, right? You take days off to go skiing.
Exactly, because the traffic is too bad on the weekends, so you go and stay up with your friend who lives in the mountains and take work off.
That's amazing. That is, you already get 4,000 points for doing that. We give you 4,000 preliminary points for playing hooky to go skiing.
Exactly.
Well, Rae, could you please tell us, what album hath thou brought before the tribunal today?
I have brought Big Fish Theory by Vince Staples, second studio album, 2017.
Those were heady days, 2017. How little we knew, right?
Heady days.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Every now and then I'll think about, like, we talk about an album on here, and I was like, wow, we didn't even know what a COVID was back then.
Yeah, it's weird how, like, I mean, it's only 6 years ago, and to think of it, it feels like decades.
Vince Staples and his ilk was very much the soundtrack of our college years at DePaul, I think. At least getting into this album and the albums in that solar system kind of put me back in that mode. Got me thinking about our days back in Chicago, our early days back there. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this. But for those of you who may not know Vince Staples, may not know the man, and may not know this album, Big Fish Theory, we have everyone's favorite segment to bring you up to speed. Just so you know, Rae, this is everyone's favorite segment, and it is the beginner's guide to Vince Staples and Big Fish Theory in 60 seconds. And Michael's going to do the heavy lifting today.
I sure am. Also, just like to point out that I was speaking to someone over here, and I mentioned the name Vince Staples, and I said, "Oh yeah, it's a hip hop artist," and they were like, "Vince, someone with the name Vince Staples is a hip hop artist."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Yeah, they are." And it's just it sounds country, doesn't it? Like for some reason, it sounds like a country singer.
Well, there's Chris Stapleton. That might be the association being made, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Am I getting that right? Chris Stapleton? That's a country artist, right?
He's a country singer. I feel like it's two very like I don't know if I know anybody by the first name Vince or the last name Staples other than the artist himself. So
I think, well, maybe if you like conflate like Vince Gill and Chris Stapleton, like it's I don't know. In any case, it just goes to show you that the person I was talking to did not know much about this artist at all. Nor did I, frankly, until having to listen to the album for this week. So I'm excited. I was excited to dive into this one and to be the person who gets to do the intro. So,
yeah.
Judge me leniently, please, Ray.
Are you ready?
As ready as I'm ever gonna be.
All right, 1 minute on the clock. Starting in 3, 2, 1.
Born in Compton, raised in the Ramona Park neighborhood of North Long Beach, Vincent Jamal Staples is a straight-edge hip-hop artist. Seriously, no drugs or alcohol. Not even when he was participating in Snoop Dogg's youth football league as a child. Seriously, Snoop has a youth football league. He originally worked with Odd Future, a hip-hop collective that features the likes of Earl Sweatshirt, Tyler the Creator, and one Mr. Frank Ocean. But it was his mixtape, Stolen Youth, produced by rapper Mac Miller, that got people's attention in 2013. In 2017, Staples released his second studio album on Def Jam, Big Fish Theory, which got hella experimental, mixing hip-hop with electronic genres like house and Detroit techno, yet still packing the tracks with bleak lyrics about fame, racism, and mental illness. It also featured collaborations with Justin Vernon, aka Bon Iver, Damon Albarn, the guy from Blur and Gorillaz, and the late Sophie, a pioneering trans electropop artist from Scotland. It even samples an interview with the late Amy Winehouse. With something unexpected on every track, you could never accuse Staples of doing the same old thing.
Ooh, 1.
Wow, that was tight. Nice work.
Thank you.
So how did he do, Ray? What would you?
That was great.
How would you grade him?
I would give you an A.
An A. Okay.
I'll take an A.
Were you an A student, Michael? Were you an A student?
You know the answer to that question, Tyler.
I do know the answer. He gets an A. He gets an A for his recap of Vince and this album. Well done, Michael. Always bringing.
Thank you. I'm ever so grateful. But now we're going to turn it to you, Ray. So before we even dive into the album, the first question we like to ask our guests, something a little bit more big picture, which is, what is your relationship with music?
This is like such a big question, and I feel like since you guys sent the email asking the questions that I would be asked today, I've been thinking about it. But it's been like very important to me. I've had like a very like not tumultuous, but like a life that like has changed a lot. I've had a lot of change in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I moved around a lot growing up, and something that like was kind of always there was music. And I've always been like researchy, like looking in, like I love, finding a new artist that I like and then downloading their whole discography. Like I was really big into like Pirate Bay and uTorrent and like, all the way back to like LimeWire. Like I feel like I was a very early adopter of like the heady ways to get music. Because I grew up living overseas. So it was like not easy to go to the like CD store and get CDs. So I was kind of like a music internet kid back in the day, like with Tumblr, and like I think I got Spotify like when way before it was what it is today.
You had your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, finger on the pulse.
Nice.
But in terms of like what it means to me, I like to think back to the anecdote of when I was 11 and my family picked up and moved to Japan from Katy, Texas. It was like a very big move. It was like a 16-hour flight or something like that, Houston to Tokyo. Back then, if you guys ever went on an international flight in like 2003, they didn't have like the big like entertainment systems that they do on planes now. So It was basically like you have a choice of like 3 different movies, and then they had all these playlists that you could listen to like on the little headphones that they give you on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was this like, I think it was like an alternative rock playlist that, or maybe like, I don't know, pop, indie pop, something like that. And I listened to this playlist like on loop for most of the flight, and it had like Bowling for Soup, and it had, I remember they had like the Umbrella music video on there. And anyway, listening to that, I just like anytime I hear a song off that playlist, I'm like, oh yeah, that transports me back to being on the plane when I was 11 going to Japan.
Ooh, that's strong. That's strong. 600 points. 600 points for the in-flight entertainment imprinting on
In-flight
you.
entertainment. And so, I mean, I don't know, like since then, I feel like I very much like chronologize time and like events in my life, like based on what I'm listening to. And then, you know, I moved to the United States for college and realized that I could go to concerts all the time. And like I lived in Chicago and artists that I love, like came and toured, and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done. Like,
Yeah.
I was lucky to be paired randomly with a roommate who was also big into music, and it just all through growing up, like I feel like I could connect to people with music that I like, you know, connect with unexpected people.
Were you seeing shows when you lived abroad? Were you like, do you have any like memories of, you know, because you've lived in far-flung
Yeah.
locales.
I have. So my first concert ever actually was in London, and it was to see Mika. Do you guys remember Mika?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
That was my
Yes.
first concert. And
3,000 points for Mika.
I went with my friend Charlotte and her mom, and I was like mind blown. Like he had this cool like stage set up, and that there's this French pop band called Yell that opened for him, and it was just like the best experience ever, and I was mind blown.
What happened to Mika? Where did Mika go?
I know, right? He's like almost a one-hit wonder, but
Kind
I have
of.
the CD somewhere.
Because I feel like he was one of those people that it seems like every few years we get a person, particularly like a mask performer who sort of brings up the mantle of Freddie Mercury, and I feel like Mika was the Freddie Mercury of that particular 3-year period of the early aughts.
That's a good way to put it, for sure.
I don't know what happened to him though. I hope he's okay.
But that was my first concert. And actually, on the topic, I wanted to give a plug for my concert spreadsheet, which is a spreadsheet that I've been keeping for a long time now. Every single concert I go to, I like have the name, the date, you know, the venue, who I went with, notes about it. So from that, I can tell you, I know that I've seen Vince Staples 9 times in concert.
9
Wow. My goodness.
No way.
It's, over 300 shows. That includes like sets at music festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But highly recommend it if you guys go to a lot of shows.
I feel like that says a lot about your personality. That's something. That's
I'm a
something. Do you do that with
Capricorn.
books and movies too?
No. I
Just
used to do it
shows.
with plays. In college, I did it with plays, but it was just like in a notebook, and that kind of fell off. But it's nice because I one time was just overcome with the fear, like, what if I don't remember when I'm older? I don't remember a concert that I went to at the Metro specifically in February of 2012.
Those were prime music years. What are some of the other artists that you remember from that period of time that really stuck with you from the college years?
Oh man.
I think of Tame Impala a lot.
Tame Impala,
one.
Beach House.
Beach
I
House,
remember loving Grimes.
Mm-hmm.
Run the Jewels. Kendrick Lamar was like in his prime.
Yeah.
Kanye was releasing great stuff.
Yeah. Were you at that thing that Kanye did outside of Wrigley Field was it for Yeezus?
No, I remember Andrew going to that though and like telling us about it.
Friend of the pod, Andrew Morel.
Yeah.
Love you, boy.
I saw it all over Twitter.
Right.
Chance the Rapper was like huge hometown hero at the time.
Now he's a judge on The Voice.
Is he?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Good for him.
he's a judge on The Voice.
I wondered where he
Oh.
would be. I was about to ask where Chance went, and I was going to say, I hope he's okay.
Yeah. Oh, quick update on Mika too, by the way. He still has quite a career, but he's now become like Europe famous.
Oh, really?
Okay.
So like,
Okay.
yeah, the Wikipedia reveals he's been busy, but like busy on the other side of the pond, as they say.
And that was your first concert period, or the first concert you remember?
Well, I mean, I vaguely remember going to like park concert kind of stuff when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time that I like was present at a concert that I like was excited about was definitely that one. And then like you asked, Tyler, so I lived in the Middle East in Doha, which was like a very like they don't really get artists to come. I saw Enrique Iglesias at Education City guitar.
Wow. Your
but-
life. Every now and then I marvel. Every now and then I'm just like, Rae has seen some shit.
Yeah, I've seen some shit, but not very many concerts until I moved to Chicago.
Now, I want to see, the thing for me is like in my years of knowing you and my years of being friends with you, like you are the concert person to me. Like you and the crew from DePaul, Claire, Emmy, Maureen, Jacob.
I can say Jacob too, yeah,
Jacob too. Like, and Andrew became part of that too. And like you guys are the concert crew. So when I think about you relative to music, I always think about concerts. But I was as we prepared for this episode, I was wondering, you play a bit of piano, don't you?
I don't play piano.
No, I thought you did.
But I did. In middle school and high school, I played the cello.
Hell yeah.
Little
That's
less
a good string
accessible
instrument.
than the piano, but
Did you?
I do feel like it developed my ear.
Did it?
If that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
And you are quite the visual artist too. So I think like that's I always kind of wonder like what people's creative expression is versus like their creative consumption, like where those two things intersect. So yeah, for you, it doesn't sound like it was playing music as much.
No, not really. I was in orchestra and stuff, but am I allowed to talk about smoking weed?
You are.
Yes.
I'm not editing that at all. I'm going to keep the pause in, and I'm going to. You are 100% allowed to start talk about smoking weed.
Okay. In the vein of like artistic expression when it comes to music, my like top 10 favorite activities is getting like insanely off my rocker blazed and just putting in headphones and like drawing, just like shutting out the world, put on a new album, put on like an album I've heard a million times, and like getting into art. That's like ideal. And recently, like since I've known my partner Ridgely is a DJ, and so we'll have like DJ paint nights where he'll like spin and just like practice DJing and I'll paint, and it's just like ideal.
Yeah, I love that. DJ Paint Nights gets 5,000 points. All right, so you've seen Vince Staples 9 times, which is absolutely insane. Do you recall how you discovered this album, what the order of events was? Was it after you saw him for the first time that you started listening to this album? What was the kernel of your relationship with this album in particular?
Yeah, so I was previously a Vince Staples fan before this album came out, like a huge fan. After his first album, Summertime '06, came out, I was given the album, or recommended the album by my then boyfriend and also Jacob, previously mentioned Jacob. They were both like, Rae, you got to listen to this album. And immediately, like, obsessed, fell in love with Vince Staples. Summertime '06 is so good. It's a bit long, which is why I didn't choose it for this podcast. But like, if you don't know Vince Staples, like start with that one. Yeah. So like, I was really, really excited for whatever project he was doing next. And so I was just kind of like in the loop with Vince Staples news. So I knew that album was coming out. I was really excited about it. And yeah, I was just kind of previously a fan.
And there was the EP that came out before this with the accompanying film. Did you watch that one? What was that?
Yes, I did. And I listened to it too. There's a great track that has Andre 3000 on it. I liked it. It's like pretty good, but didn't stick out to me as much as Summertime '06 or Big Fish Theory.
Prima Donna, that's what it was called.
Prima Donna, yeah.
And the really, really cool little short film that went along with it. It kind of, I think, taps into some of these theories, or taps into some of these themes that he's playing with in Big Fish Theory. What was it that you loved about it? What kind of struck you? Do you remember an emotional landscape? Do you remember like a lyrical thing that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like exactly where I was when I listened to it for the first
time. Tell us.
So I'm somebody who, like, when an album comes out from an artist that I love, I'll like plan like, okay, I'm going to listen to this album like in this setting. So at the time I was training for the 2017 Chicago Marathon, and the day that it came out, I was like, okay, I'm saving this for my run later. Like, it's going to be my running soundtrack. And I was running along Lakeshore Drive, like on the lakefront path. And, I just like turned it on, and the like intro of it is like a little bit ethereal, and it's kind of like, ooh, what's going on? Like this isn't, this doesn't sound like it's about to be a hip hop album. So really from the beginning, it's like, oh, this is intriguing. And then there's just so much like dirty bass that just like punches you in the face, and like, I'm running along and I hear Kendrick Lamar come on, and I swear to God, I was running down the street and I'm like, oh, like listening to Kendrick Lamar come on. Because at the time too, like Kendrick Lamar was one of my favorite rappers, and I was always like, oh, it'd be so cool if like Vince Staples and Kendrick Lamar did a track together. And then like I didn't know that he was going to be on it, and he has such a iconic voice, and he like pops in, and I just mind blown.
It's unmistakable. And it's the same with Andre. When Andre comes in on something, you're like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, honestly, probably the same exact thing happened with that track on Prima Donna, because I was running a lot at the time. And
yeah, it's got to be good for running, I imagine. I don't typically run with music in, which is, I feel like we've talked about this before maybe, but like I can't, there's something about running and having headphones in that gives me a headache. But I imagine this is a good running album.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a long playlist of running songs, and there's certainly several from Big Fish Theory on that playlist.
And then did you see him perform this album like on a tour by himself, or when did you next see him perform?
So if I remember correctly, he toured this album. He came to the Metro, and he was touring with Kilo Kish, who's one of his frequent collaborators. She's awesome. Her solo stuff is really great too. Yeah, so I saw him at the Metro, and she was opening for him, and I remember being like, hell yes, like I hope that they perform together, and they didn't, and it was so disappointing. I don't know if this is something you want to include in the podcast, but like
almost certainly yes.
I've like kind of TBH most of the time been a little bit disappointed with Vince's performances in person.
Really?
Yeah, so I've seen him in like a festival setting, I've seen him at bars, I've seen him at the Pepsi Center here, like opening for Childish Gambino.
Yeah.
And he's just like meant for a little bit of a smaller space. I say that, but like he did a tiny desk during COVID, so it was like when they were doing it at home. And in that, he's like amazing. And so I feel like he's just like more of a recording, like, performing in a small space, like maybe just not so much of an audience, like he's not so much of an on tour artist to see, if that makes sense. Like I literally love him, but
well, I think I'll give you 6,000 points for meant for a smaller space, because I've experienced that with artists before where I'm like, this doesn't quite fit. There's something about your sound that doesn't quite, and I'm trying to think of an example right now, but one's not coming to me, but I do think it's very important in feeling in a live performance setting that you are getting kind of the size of the crowd and the size of the venue all fit the artist and their music.
Do you think it has to do at all with the sort of electronic influence? I mean, for someone who, I don't know as much about Vince Staples, but I do know that listening to this album, I just heard so much of the electronic side of things. And I find that sometimes replicating that live sometimes feels like it doesn't have the same, you don't have the same visceral impact as other artists live might have. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
It definitely could, because in times that I've seen him perform, like it's just him on stage. And and I remember, so I was going to say the first time that I saw him was at the Underground Lounge in Chicago, and that was lit. Like that was like, he was first coming up. It was maybe in 2013. Yeah. And that's like, or no, it must have been 2015, because that's when I had that picture taken. And it was like extremely lit, like small, low ceilings, like the crowd is just like giving so much energy, and like he's right there on the stage.
Yes.
How many feet away from you was Vince Staples in that venue?
Oh, I was front row. So he was, at times, 4 feet away.
Oh my God.
That's so good.
That was, I had a tumultuous relationship right out of college, and he, for my birthday, got us VIP tickets to see Vince Staples, which VIP tickets were like $40, like nothing big. But
Don't
like,
get it
included
twisted,
meet
yeah.
and greet, and like I think we got to go into the venue early or something like that. But that was definitely like shout out to Steve for those concert tickets.
So I think we've kept our listeners in suspense long enough. We should probably listen to some of Vince Staples' music. Rae, what track have you chosen as your standout track from the album?
I have chosen Yeah, Right.
Excellent. Let's give it a listen, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. I'm sure we'll have tons to say about it.
That's the end of part 1. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part 2, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.